Good evening and welcome to Voice of BC. I'm Vaughn Palmer and we're doing one of our special topical shows tonight, and we're doing it on water in British Columbia and the threat to water and the shortage of water and our most valuable natural resource and all those other things. I think you're going to find this interesting because I'm looking forward to talking about the fact that there's great big chunks of British Columbia where there's a huge problem of water shortages and tainted water and corrupted water and wasted water. We talked a little bit earlier about the drought conditions in the Peace River, and we talked about the fracking and oil and gas up there, but we're now going to talk, we've got a couple of clips here on a project. It's an electricity project, but it's a hydro project, so we got water again. The big Site C Dam project. So let's start with just a general comment and question on it about why build it there. Gwen Johansson, here she is.
If you look at it provincially, I've always argued that BC Hydro needs to build closer to its load, which is on southern Vancouver Island and the Lower Mainland, and also it needs to diversify its source of supply. And because if you continue to bring in your electricity from the hinterlands, you never have, people need to see the consequences of their own consumption. Otherwise, I don't think you can ever change their use patterns.
I like that comment because Lower Mainland residents and Vancouver Island residents just go berserk at the suggestion that anyone would build anything that generates electricity near them, even though they're the ones who use the electricity. It's so much nicer to bring it in from the Peace River country. But anyway, it's not a bad comment, right?
Well,
remember the Upper Pitt River project, right?
Well, that's true.
Or the transmission line that they put through Tsawwassen, which cost the government a seat in the House, right?
Yeah, I mean there is no doubt that people get quite inflamed about these issues. But I think Gwen's point is a point well taken. People in Vancouver don't realize that about a third of their power is coming from a dam that's a day and a half's drive away from them. And what we're talking about doing now is potentially putting another dam, a third dam on that system to provide more power. And it is a truism in our society, unfortunately, that we're often divorced or separated from those things that give us comfort and sustain us. And I think that we have an enormous challenge, obviously, on our hands to provide power to an increasing population, much of it being in the south of the province. But I think before we start saddling other regions of the province with significant environmental problems, that we ought to be doing everything in our power to conserve and limit the need to be building these things. And I know that Oliver in his work has done a lot on, creative power sources that we really have yet to exploit that could offset the need to build Site C. I'm
going to get a clip here from Linda Hagen and then get a comment from Oliver. So here's Linda. Same subject.
My concern is over the long-range impact, and I mean all the thousands of kilometers at the Peace that then moves into other river streams. What will happen then? What kind of impact is it going to have on the Mackenzie Delta, which it already has since the building of the first dam? And on top of it, now we're going to build a third dam, plus take water out for all of industry. Are we going to be able to have water for everyone? What's going to happen to the far north?
So you got the W.C. Bennett Dam, and then the Peace Canyon Dam, and then you'd have the third dam, which is at Site C.
I mean, this to me is a classic of talking about a larger issue. Like, how can we talk about whether this site warrants doing this if we don't know, A, what are we going to use the power for? Have we really explored all the alternatives? Lots of innovative stuff out of Sweden where they're using sewage to power buses and to heat homes. There's a big portion that we aren't even beginning to explore. So it's difficult to say whether this itself is valuable, but I think the big one is to get away from the idea that just because it doesn't produce carbon in the standard way, it's green. Trashing a river to avoid an oil refinery kind of project may make sense in some cases, but there are consequences. So it might be better to say some of these projects are less brown as opposed to just saying they're green.
Well, Paul Ramsey's got the question for you then. Here he is, Paul Ramsey.
One of the great debates in British Columbia as we move into our green power is how we can supplement intermittent sources of green power, wind or solar, or even tidal, with some sort of firm power that will ensure all of us that the electricity is going to be there and we flip the switch. It seems there's no good answer though. Site C, which is one of the obvious sources of firm power, seems to be under attack by many in the environmental community. If we don't want to do large-scale hydro as a source of firm power for a green electricity network, what sources should we use?
And folks, if you're watching at home and you saw that shot of Paul Ramsey there, that was shot in Victoria this afternoon. I know you're sitting there in the snow in Vancouver. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We got snow in Victoria too. So anyway, if not Site C, Mr. Smarty Pants, then what?
Well, you know, there are a lot of innovative things that we could be doing and should be doing. So to give an example, the amount of wood in Vancouver that is landfilled each year would be enough to power a plant that would heat all the buildings in the downtown core and displace the need to use natural gas. So trust me, there's lots of things we could be doing that we're not doing. The second thing, though, that I think we need to, that I would take issue with this last comment is that where is the power from Site C going to go? We have a $300 million transmission line proposal that was announced in the throne speech last year that would link the community of Fort St. John with Fort Nelson. Why is that transmission line being built? It's being built to supply power to the natural gas sector, which is producing shale gas, which is one of the most energy-intensive fossil fuel production methods out there, so that we can then turn around and supply our natural gas in the Horn River Basin in northeast BC, potentially to Fort McMurray, to power the extraction of the most energy-intensive oil in the world.
You're making this up.
Yeah, no, I'm not. So there are significant linkages between the electricity that is about to be produced.
I want to go back through that again because that needs to be gone through twice. You build a dam on the Peace River to generate electricity. You build a transmission line to take the electricity from Site C around Fort St. John up to Fort Nelson. When it gets there, you use that electricity to drive the extraction of natural gas from shale gas, that process. Right. And when you get the gas, you put it in a pipeline, you ship it over to Alberta, to Fort McMurray. They light it up to melt the oil out of the oil sands, and they sell the oil to the Americans.
Well, they sell it wherever they sell it, and let's remember that.
But that's what you say.
That's basically what could happen. And you got to remember.
That sounds like a brilliant economic strategy to me, but you know.
So if we're going to talk about green power production at Site C or any other hydroelectric facility, it behooves us, I think, to look at what some of the end uses are and where we know or ought to know the increasing power demands are going to be. And very clearly, the provincial government is on record as saying there are incredible demands for new power from the natural gas sector.